As Alex-Murdaugh's legal fight heads back to court, many are wondering how often murder convictions are actually overturned.
Christy Calcagno sat down with Columbia Attorney Joe McCullough to break down the odds, the process, and what happens next.
How often are murder convictions actually overturned?
The stats are not really clear,
Right.
but I would say that, you're looking at something in the 2% range, probably in South Carolina, not unlike other states. New trials, reversals on appeal are just very difficult to achieve because there's a natural desire by the judiciary and the appellate courts to see finality. They do that, I think, for victim security, but sometimes the law simply cries out for a new trial. The public misconception is that courts are looking at the facts and the evidence with an eye towards overturning the jury verdict, and that is rarely the case. There are, because of the National Innocence Project effort, is something that does show that new trials are granted because of factual mistakes. But by and large, appeals are based upon procedural problems, failures of the prosecutor perhaps making an overzealous argument that is ultimately deemed to be so prejudicial as to require a new trial. More frequently, it is about mistakes made by the court, by the judge, in allowing evidence in precluding or preventing evidence from coming in that operates to the prejudice of the defendant and the fair trial concept. And sometimes you have a case on appeal like the Murduagh case that takes you directly to a somewhat novel issue, which is whether jury tampering took place. The question in this appeal is whether the tampering intruded into the jury's deliberations and what the legal standards for reaching that decision are. So that's the battleground in part in the Murduagh case. Otherwise, there is the issue of whether the court erred in allowing certain evidence in that operated to such a prejudicial extreme that it would require a new trial.
Can you walk us through this timeline? So this happens in February. How long does it typically take for something like this to happen? It's not immediate, right?
Oh, no. The arguments will occur, in mid-February, I believe. Court's not announced how much time will be permitted. The issues are fairly finite. They relate to evidentiary prejudice and the jury tampering issue. There are some other issues that are sub issues, but will take a backseat to those big ticket items. This is a 6-week record, so you've got thousands and thousands of pages. It's equal to the longest trial in the history of the state of South Carolina, criminal case. And that's going to take a lot of digestion by the court.
What should viewers realistically expect when it comes to these next steps in the Murduagh case?
Well, there's such an interest, a high level of interest, if not obsession in the public, that everybody feels like they know the case, they know the facts, but they cannot know the legal issues because the issues are really unsettled. A new trial is granted, then the decisions from there by the prosecution are whether or not they actually retry the case. I mean, in some schools, or there's a school of thought that why in the world retry a case this controversial? Why put the victims through all of this, the rigors of a trial? And the victims are the Murduagh family as well as Maggie's family. Do those families really want a new trial if one is granted? And what's the point? How many times can you serve essentially a life sentence? So.
Well, Murdaugh's appeals are going to be heard next Wednesday morning, but there's no timeline on when the High Court is going to make a decision.
And when the court convenes next week, we will have you covered. Criminal defense experts will be live in our studio that morning throughout the day and night, breaking down all the key components inside the Supreme Court and keeping you updated on what to expect next.